In this episode, we speak with Matt Kunkel and Jon Siegler, the co-founders of LogicGate, a global market-leading SaaS company enabling cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliance teams to easily and effectively accelerate their GRC program maturity. The organization's platform has received numerous praise from industry experts and analysts, noting the user experience is second to none. Based in Chicago, LogicGate serves almost 400 brands across the globe, simplifying the complex to help GRC leaders be more efficient, productive, and effective. They have expertise in FinTech, banking, healthcare, hospitality, energy, and many other industries. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Matt and Jon, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Thanks for having us, RJ. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be here.
So where I thought we'd kick off is the beginning of how the two of you met, but just to get our audience into this, maybe a quick snapshot or the overview of LogicGate, and then from there we'll go into how it started.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Let me give you kind of the quick 2-minute elevator pitch on LogicGate, which is a global market-leading SaaS company that really helps regulatory, risk, compliance, security folks effectively enable and accelerate something called GRC, governance, risk, and compliance programs across their organization. So in a nutshell, we help simplify GRC processes and security processes for compliance teams, regulatory teams, risk teams, and security teams, and allow them to drive efficiencies in their day-to-day activities, reduce time, all in a cost-effective manner. We've got almost 250 global employees now, about 400 global customers. About half of those are larger brands that you would know, like the Rite Aids of the world or the Hyatt Hotels of the world or the Zurich Financials of the world. Recognized as the leader in holistic GRC and something called dynamic GRC by Forrester, who's one of the analysts in the analyst community out there. The last 20 quarters in a row, we've been recognized as a leader by our peers in G2, which is a peer-to-peer kind of review site. And, I'd be very remiss if I wouldn't say that Jon and I heavily lean on talent in our people. And I think our job as founders and as executives of the company is how do you bring in amazingly talented people into the organization? How do they empower our customers? And then the investor side of the house kind of takes care of itself. You get great people, they help build an amazing product and help onboard customers and change those customers' lives from a risk compliance and regulatory perspective. And then that kind of takes care of the investor side of the house. So it's been pretty easy over the last almost decade that Jon and I have been doing this now to raise capital, and happy to talk about that because of the people that we have in this organization.
Excellent. So from what I gather, the two of you, before LogicGate, before you co-founded it, knew each other probably at the company you were with. You were at Navigant. So tell us about the genesis of how this company or how the idea came to be.
Sure. Jon and I both worked at a consulting firm called Navigant Consulting, and we were running a custom application development group there, largely building custom GRC solutions for big companies like Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase, and really did this for quite a long period of time. And we both picked our heads up and we looked around and we realized that the best selling teams was failed implementations of legacy GRC products that were in the market. So we were called in to write custom code over those failed implementations, all from a services perspective, time and materials hour. And I think Jon and I said, listen, there's a much better way of doing this than just continually writing custom code, and we can create a real differentiated, unique product in the market, really around three kind of core pillars. One is a platform was adding a lot of value to organizations. Two is it's got to be as easy to use as an app on an iPhone, because that is how people interact with technology these days. And three is really having a flexible data model to underpin, because we were asked to do so many change orders to the technology that we were building for folks. So how do we enable, and if you think about it, change is the only inevitability in business, right? From a strategy perspective, over time, your business changes. And if that's changing, your risk appetite changes, your regulatory landscape changes, your privacy landscape changes, the third parties you do business with change. So how do we create a platform that can meet organizations where they are today from a risk and compliance perspective, but can change over time, all without having to get us, the consultants and the developers, involved? So allowing the business users to make updates for themselves. So that was kind of the high level vision. Jon can probably go into the story a little more on what we were doing and how we thought of the idea and the late nights that we had on the road together to say, let's go take the leap of faith in our entrepreneurial journey. This is the first time we've both been entrepreneurs, and leave our cushy consulting jobs.
At the time, it's changed after COVID, but at the time, consultants were like, always had to be on site. Like we had to be in front of our customers, at least 4 days a week. So we were traveling nonstop for, 2 years down to Jacksonville, Florida for our client, JP Morgan Chase at the time. And like Matt alluded to, a lot of long nights, like, working till 9 p.m. in the office, driving home, a lot of time to think in the car. And I think we were in a rental car just driving back to our hotel from the office one night. And we're like, we should just do this ourselves. Like we already know the requirements. Like we've done this for so many different companies in so many different ways. We know what they're looking for. We know they also want to like self-manage this. So they couldn't do for us. They had to come back to us for all the changes they wanted and the customizations they wanted. We know that they want to self-manage it. So why don't we just try to do it ourselves and see how it goes? And we always knew at the time, when we took the leap, that we could always go right back to consulting. Like if it didn't work out, we could always go right back. We didn't have families at the time, so it wasn't like super complicated for us. Like we could go and we could work long hours. When we started the company, didn't have a ton of commitments at the time. And just knowing like, we did take some of the like Jeff Bezos, like regret minimization decision framework, which was like, looking back 10 years, we have like regretted not doing this, probably yes. But we wouldn't have like regretted trying it and like it not working out. We go right back to the jobs we had because we had confidence that they'd probably open the door back up to us if we came back to them.
Mm-hmm.
When thinking about founding a company, there were two things that I think we at LogicGate have and that really set ourselves apart and have allowed us to get very, very far in a pretty short period of time from a company building perspective. One is that, Jon and I did this for 10 years in the consulting space, so we knew exactly what to build. There, most companies die in the early phase because, frankly, not that they have bad ideas, but because they don't have the capital on the runway to pivot enough to get to product market fit. We had product market fit literally day -1. We knew exactly what to build and how to build it, right? And the other thing is, and I think something very unique with our founding team, we had 3 co-founders at LogicGate. All 3 co-founders are still with the business, still on the executive team and still have roles. And that's because we complement each other so extremely well, right? I like to say we a hipster, a hacker, and a hustler in our founding team. Our third co-founder, Dan Campbell, who is our technical co-founder, wrote all the code for the initial beta version of the platform himself, was clearly our hacker. Jon here is kind of the jack of all trades guy. Like in the early days, he was doing our legal, he was doing our HR, he built the website. He's not a coder. He built the website by himself, So kind of the person who can take on any task in any role in the early days, of which there are so many in an organization, to just figure out how to do it. And I was the hustler, right? I was the face person. I was how do we hire the first 50 people? How do we convince customers when we have a beta version that you should join us and take the entrepreneurial ride with us? And we're going to be the market leader in this space. And you got to come along the journey with us. And then how are you going to convince capital providers that this is a very good and safe bet and this company will be a market leader at some point in time? So those 3 roles and personas. First of all, I don't know if I'd ever start a company again. That's a whole different topic, and it's really hard to start a company and do it. But if I ever were, I would have 3 people as my co-founders, or 2 other people. I would have a hacker and a hipster for sure.
I could see how, given that you were coming from consulting, you could almost risk mitigate on the front end of starting a company. You could say like, well, why don't we get clients to consult, bring in that cash flow, and while we do that, build our platform technology. And so it's either success or not success. You kind of have this middle ground. Did you think about that at all? Or did you go right into like, okay, we got to bring in capital, we got to build the platform, et cetera?
when we left Navigant, they were very worried that a couple of the big projects that we currently had would falter and fall down. So they actually consulted back to us on a fixed fee time horizon. So we, like, day one, we had a pretty good chunk of capital to invest in the business for, giving them back time and materials of making sure that those projects don't fall down. And we did that to the best of our ability under the contract that we had with them. So that kind of risk mitigated day one. Don't get me wrong, Jon and I took a zero salary for 2 years and lived off our savings, but we had enough money to bootstrap the business to get it to a spot where we have a really strong MVP, because we wrote every line of code in the platform and it's all our self code. That bootstrapped us enough to get to a spot where we could bring customers on the platform and customers can start paying, and get us into a program called Techstars, Y Combinator Techstars. And Jon actually, like, I give him a ton of credit for this. He was the one that said, hey, we should do this. And I'm like, what are we doing? We're not giving away any equity. We need to focus on customers. We need to focus on acquiring them. This is hogwash. We shouldn't join this thing. And then we got to the very final phase and they gave us a pitch. And after the pitch, I was like, God, I hope we get into this thing, because it's going to be a game changer. And it really was. We got to meet a lot of amazing entrepreneurs through it. And one of the guys that's still my personal mentor, a guy by the name of Mike Gampson, who at the time he ran global head of sales at LinkedIn. He was the first money into the business with a buddy of his, and the buddy of his turned out to be Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And Jeff really has been an amazing mentor to us as well. And, we can ask Jon, but I think another big reason that we've gotten so far so fast is we knew that we were first-time entrepreneurs and we didn't know everything. So we wanted to surround ourselves with people who have built, scaled, and ultimately exited multiple billion-dollar software businesses. And that's where we've done with folks like Jeff and Mike, a guy by the name of Scott Dorsey, who created ExactTarget, bought Pardot, sold it to Salesforce. He's on our board through a company called High Alpha, who's an investor in us. So really maximizing for putting operators around our advisors and board member team to help us mitigate mistakes along the different scale phases of building and scaling a company.
It sounds like there were these kind of mechanisms to mitigate the risk up front, although, you were not taking any salary, but you had product market fit early. So you had a lot of wind at your back, I would say. Can you tell me about, like, maybe some things that happened, maybe early obstacles where you really thought, man, this is way harder than we thought it would be?
It's funny with the Techstars program, because we kind of, like Matt said, we were like, hey, we should apply to this and see what happens. And then they brought us in to do like a final round interview, basically. And we did a demo of our platform and like answered all these questions. And we were getting like really tough questions. And we left that meeting and like, that did not go well. There's no way we're getting into this program. Like, they were poking holes in everything. And then we didn't hear from 2 weeks. And then they came back and said, hey, you got into the program. But we were like deflated a little bit after that meeting. We're like, we have no shot. But yeah, I think it's just like, it's kind of riding the wave through those ups. There's tons of ups and downs along the way. There's been a lot of ups at LogicGate throughout our history, but there's also been pretty low points as well. And I think it's like remaining calm and level-headed kind of gets you through those, because you're going to come out of it and there's going to be an upside. And I think persistence really pays off, being an entrepreneur, and having resilience to be able to ride those waves really pays off. But there's been a lot of ups and downs along the way.
I always find it fascinating when someone came from the corporate world, so to speak, or consulting, falling within that, and is now running a company. Not only is it a shift in identity, it's a shift in how you actually like think and act and work through problems, or how you see the world. I'd be curious what you would tell the hundreds of thousands of people in the consulting world, maybe some of them who are thinking about like starting their own company. What would you say are kind of the key characteristics or skills that you need to have to be successful as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, great question. I'll list a few and then Siegs, you can list a few. I think first and foremost, do it. Like, you just have to take the jump and the leap, right? And have to say, like Jon and I said, I mean, we literally, I can vivid, it's 2:00 in the morning and we're like, what's the worst that can happen? We're not in a car at 2:00 in the morning driving home. And the worst that happens is we're right back here in 2 years doing the same exact thing, right? So first is take the leap. I think second is exactly what Jon said. There are going to be amazing highs and there's going to be some terrible, terrible lows. And I think Most startups fail, and frankly, growth companies fail because they don't stick with it and they are not resilient. And resiliency is, I think, the single best trait of an entrepreneur, any entrepreneur, is being able to fight through the hard times and being able to quell the emotional highs of the high times so that you can get right back on the horse the very next day and go attack it again, right? And not say, hey, I'm going off to the beach for a week because we had such a big high. So I think those are two. And then the third that I would add is you can't do it alone. You got to put people around yourself, whether that's a team of co-founders like John, Dan, and I had here, or whether that's, amazing first hires into the company. The only way you scale and you grow is you hire an amazing team around you that believe in the mission and what you're trying to do, and that have a shared common set of values. This is not something we did day one at LogicGate, like, ooh, we got to sit down and write values on a piece of paper. But it is so important. And we did it pretty early based on, frankly, feedback from Jeff and Scott of like, what is the culture in your organization? What is the culture that you want to have? And culture to me is not driven by John or myself or our executive team. We set out the values, and really what values are, I think, is decision-making criteria. Our entry-level BDRs or entry-level engineers or managers in the company, they make 250 decisions every single day by themselves. And we want those decisions grounded in a shared common set of values. And that is what drives culture. And if you can have people that are bought into a mission with an amazing culture and you have product market fit, a lot can go wrong and you still can scale to extreme heights within an organization.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of specific things coming from the consulting world, like in consulting, you go to like a website of a consulting company and you're like, what do they do exactly? Like there's a lot of information on here. Or like you look at a slide deck created by a consultant and there's like 1,000 words like jammed into a slide on a page. And I do think that there's like two related things. One is like simplification of the message to like actually focus in on the problem that you're solving, a very pointed problem. And then two is like focus. Like we were distracted by this early on. Our platform can do a lot, and trying to like boil the ocean with the problems we're solving, because it's like, we'll take business from anywhere. And that's sort of the consulting mindset is like, hey, we'll consult anybody and we'll get, professional services hours from anybody and it'll be great. But in order to scale a company, you really need to like focus on a distinct set of problems and personas and really understand those, and then really know how to message those and then build products around them that solve their problems. And I think that was a bit of a transition for us from coming from the consulting world. And I think would probably resonate or be like a good focus area for anybody coming from consulting and looking to start a company, particularly like a SaaS product, some takeaways for them.
And related to focus, did you then, if you had like these array of use cases, did you then say like, well, no, let's only focus on this particular sector, this particular customer?
So here's the thing is like, GRC is a wide space in amongst itself. You have many different personas you service and use cases. And that's why a platform like ours works, because it kind of connects all this together. But early on, and this happened during our Techstars program, is we were like, hey, actually, we could solve any business process problem that a company's having. We could just be like a business process management platform and be really generic. So we like started to go down that route, and quickly the managing directors of that program are like, hey, you guys are being idiots. Governance, risk, and compliance, and you already built a platform for that. Why are you trying to like do something that's not you? Like focus on GRC, even though that's like a wider space in amongst itself. You need to focus your efforts there. And I think that was a really key advice for us early on, was not trying to like broaden the scope of the problem we're solving and get more specific.
And related to GRC and your target market, I mean, clearly some industries are heavily regulated and maybe compliance is a big activity stream. Do you go beyond that? Like the GRC moniker, can that be almost any company that has their own internal risk processes that they want to carry out?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we are extremely horizontal. Pick any industry vertical, and we have very large players in that vertical. I mean, obviously, the heavily regulated ones, the financial services space, the healthcare space, the pharma space, those are great customers of ours because they have regulation and compliance needs. But third-party risk management falls under GRC. Everyone in the world works with third parties now. If you're a tech company and you want to sell your product, you darn well better be SOC compliant, right? So you have those compliance regulations. If you want to do business over in EMEA right now, you have to be DORA compliant, right? Doesn't matter what industry vertical you're in. So there's certainly heavily regulated ones that bubble up more to the top when you think about kind of the overall profile of the business. But every organization on the planet, once they've hit a certain scale, needs regulatory, risk, compliance, governance, privacy, audit capabilities. Our secret sauce is the ability to link all of those together with actual business on top of it. So layering strategic objectives of the organization and then say, how can we help the business make more informed risk-based decisions to drive revenue, right? Because if you think about it, the best companies in the world are built on taking strategic bets and strategic risks. We just want to empower them to have the data and the insights to say, yeah, this is a good risk-based strategic bet that we have on our hand. Mm-hmm. And that cuts across all industry verticals.
Got it. We touched on investors. You've got great investors. Maybe tell us a little bit about the value that they've brought to the table beyond financial capital.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the best investors out there really are two things. One is I would argue that they're ex-operators themselves, and they are like recovering operators turned venture investors or turned private equity investors because they know what you're going through, right? And you certainly, to run a business at scale, you certainly need to have financials and you need to model it and you need to create what is the 12-month time horizon look like? What does the 3-year time horizon look like, right? But ultimately, it's people that run organizations, and it's very hard to truly run a business off a spreadsheet. And I think operators that have been in there understand that. So that's one. I also think two is the best investors out there know how to push you extremely hard, but at the same time, know how to have your back implicitly in good times or bad times. And that's really what it boils down to me. I always tell people capital is pretty cheap, even in this environment, and even last year. Great companies, capital is always going to be cheap for you. And you can always find capital. I mean, John and I, we've raised $156 million. I've never put together a pitch deck in my life. Never had a pitch deck. We sent out a bunch of great emails on here's a hack for early stage companies. Every investor, every potential angel you meet with, you put in your own personal CRM and you ask them at the end of the meeting, hey, I send out a weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever it is that you want, just update on the business. Can I add you to my email list? 0 people are going to say no to that. And that's how you keep them apprised on, now the business has to be doing pretty good, but that's how you keep them apprised on the business. And that's how you get unsolicited term sheets. Because you get enough of those, the investors get enough data points, they're going to reach out to you. You don't have to reach out to them. And they're going to say, man, I love what you've been doing over the business over the last 18 months. We'd love to invest. Here's a term sheet. They never put together a pitch deck in our lives. And that's how we did it.
That's a great tip. Okay, we're entering into the tail end of the conversation here. I have 2 questions. Like each of you can answer each question. So the first one is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
In terms of like entrepreneurship, there's like a long history of entrepreneurs in my family, and it's hard to pick just one, but we were actually in the process of like decorating a wall in one room, and we were going to put up all like some like memorabilia of old business on both sides of my wife and my family. And I'd say it's just like been in my blood. My dad started his many companies throughout his life. My grandparents on both sides started a business. My wife's family had a family business that they started. And I think just having that in the bloodstream through the daily conversations we've had really was like a profound impact on me starting LogicGate and into the future.
Mm-hmm. I would say for me, it's Scott Dorsey. We talked about him, the ExactTarget CEO and founder. And he, to me, has just helped me. I think it's hard as a founder CEO kind of go through the different scales and phases of literally founder CEO to kind of startup CEO to growth phase CEO. And you have to evolve as a CEO during that time period, right? And take on different roles and responsibilities within the organization. And he's helped me so profoundly think through that and help me morph my style and help me as a leader within the company. So to me, it would certainly be Scott.
Fantastic. Okay, last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
With LogicGate, we work with, over the past few years, an organization called the Seneca Foundation. They're based in Chicago, so underrepresented youth that are going into technical majors like computer science or their engineering majors. They connect them with programming, expose them to technology companies and different roles available to them. And we've been partnering with them the last couple of years, and it's a really cool program to kind of build that understanding and knowledge throughout those groups. And they come into the office, we do all-day sessions, do fun activities with them, expose them to different roles at our organization, the processes we have. So it's called the Seneca Foundation in Chicago.
John stole my thunder. That's mine as well. And I think for a couple different reasons. One is it's Chicago-based. Two is, we're a SaaS company at heart, and I think we really believe in technology and technology entrepreneurs. And three is, I think Chicago, if you think about the Chicagoland area, it's an amazing spot for computer science. We've got Northwestern, we've got U of Chicago. Just down the road, we've got University of Illinois, who has one of the best computer science programs in the world. And so many of them leave. And so many of them go to coast and go to other places. There's a project called P33 in Chicago, which is how do we get Chicago to be one of the best tech hubs in the United States and really in the world by 2033. And we talk a lot on that committee about why is the talent dispersing outside of Chicago when it's so far here? And programs like Seneca really help keep that talent here, keep that local talent here, and really keep that underrepresented talent here. So, we sponsor them at LogicGate, and it's a great cause.
Excellent. Well, Matt and Jon, I want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, RJ. I appreciate it.
Thanks, RJ.